For today's movie review, I'll be reviewing the movie X-Men: Days of Future Past. And yeah, it's probably one of the better X-Men movies since X2. So, for the plot of X-Men: Days of Future Past, the X-Men from the future are having a difficult time trying to fight off the Sentinels from the future. And the only way they can achieve victory is by sending Wolverine's consciousness back to his younger self so that he can reunite the younger versions of Charles and Erik to prevent the Sentinel Program from ever happening. And in terms of what I liked about the movie, I like that it's the first superhero movie since the original X-Men movie to revolve around time travel. I just love the huge cast of characters, because you don't only get the characters from the original X-Men trilogy, but you also get the characters from X-Men First Class interacting with one another. So that was pretty cool. Also, I just love the humor in this film. It's not like force-fed humor, it's more like, oh, this is something a character would naturally do. And it was pretty hysterical. And the Sentinels don't look that bad, both the past and the future ones. Although I do wish that the future Sentinels looked more like the ones from the past. And also, I kind of wanted to see more of the future Sentinels fight, but they were pretty cool either way. Also, I like the costume design for a lot of the mutants from the past and the ones from the future, like Bishop and Blink, Warpath. And yeah, that's really about it for what I liked about the movie. In terms of what I disliked about this film, like I said earlier, there's a huge cast of characters, which means they focus more on certain characters than they do others. Like, the characters like Bishop, Blink, Warpath, and Sunspot. Okay, we know what their powers are, but what are they like? What's their personality? How do they interact with each other? We don't know, because all they do is just stand there silently and or use their powers to fight against the future Sentinels. And I just feel there's just a lot of characters in this movie that get limited screen time. Not just from those characters, but also characters like Havoc, who only appears in like one scene, and Quicksilver, who you see in the trailers, looks like he's gonna be a major part of the movie, and it's like, oh, you only see him in these two scenes. Then he's like gone. It's like, oh, that's it? Okay. I wanted to see more of that character because he was pretty cool. And there's just a few questions that this didn't necessarily get answered. Like, how is Charles Xavier alive? How did Wolverine get his adamantium claws back? Like, they don't answer those questions. Also, the good majority of the movie takes place during the past and not necessarily the future. Like, yeah, they show like what's going on in the future, but not much happens. Or at least in the middle. I'm not gonna spend too much time with Wolverine, even though he's the main character. Like, if you've seen X2 X-Men United, that's how Wolverine was in this movie. And as for the older versions of Charles Xavier and Magneto, pretty much I feel like the older Charles in this movie is a bit more worried than he was in any of the other movies. But he still had hope. As for Magneto, you could tell that he still doesn't quite have all of his powers because of the events of the third movie. But he still, like, helps during the final battle. And yeah, he doesn't really do much in this film. Now, as for the younger versions of Charles and Magneto, the first time I saw Charles, he just reminded me of the dude from The Big Lebowski. And also, it's very interesting seeing how he is at the start of the movie, then how he becomes at the end of the movie. Because dude's basically a druggie at the beginning of the movie. It's like, oh my god, this movie has some genuinely dark moments. But then only because he doesn't want to sit in the wheelchair. Although you kind of see him making up his own mind as if he wants to go back to the wheelchair or not. As for the younger version of Magneto, the dude's pretty kick-ass. Also, I love how dedicated he is to the plan of saving the future, even though it might involve doing something wrong completely. Like, when you just watch him on screen, it's just like, wow, you're willing to go that far to save the mutants? Killing one of your own allies? Wow. Very twisted. Now, as for Mystique in the movie, she plays a major role in the film's plot. I'm not going to say too much about it, but in her Mystique during this time around, basically we are seeing the inner turmoils of the character, because is she Raven or is she Mystique? And she basically has to choose one of these two personas to follow up. If she chooses Raven, she's basically the good guy. If she chooses Mystique, she's basically the bad guy at the point. So she has got some major decisions to make. Also, she has some memorable scenes as well. Then comes our main antagonist, Trask. Basically, he's the dude that built the Sentinels, or is responsible for the Sentinel Program. And yeah, he doesn't really do much in the film. Like, he's a pretty cool villain, it's just doesn't really do much. His Sentinels, on the other hand, are pretty freaking awesome, from both the past and the future versions. Although I didn't necessarily like the design of the future versions, but whatever. Then comes Hank. Basically, he's like he was in X-Men First Class. Although the only thing that bugs me was his beast form, because it just looked like something out of Teen Wolf, if you ask me. Just, it didn't look like a beast. But he was a pretty cool character. And there's a lot of characters in this movie. Like, I wouldn't mind talking about the characters such as like Bishop, Blink, Warpath, Sunspot, Colossus, Iceman. The list goes on. Like, I would, but they have only a limited amount of screen time, so you don't really know the characters that well, or you don't get enough character development throughout the entire movie. So, yeah, that's it for the characters. So, for my final verdict of X-Men Days of Future Past, it's a pretty good installment of the X-Men movies. Even though I still prefer X2 over this one, it's a pretty good movie. And it's the only superhero movie that to date that involves time travel. That's a pretty cool concept in a superhero movie. And besides having good special effects and memorable action sequences, it's also got some pretty good humor. And even though I had a lot of problems with it, it's still a pretty good movie. And there's a lot of characters from like both the original trilogy and the prequel like movie, and a few new characters in between. So yeah, lots of characters, and which means we're only going to see these characters over these characters. And that's kind of a disappointment on my part, because I really wanted to know more about like Bishop and Blink, Warpath, Quicksilver, Sunspot, and like all those characters. It's like I want to really know, what are their backgrounds? What are their personalities like? And they're pretty awesome. And it's like, we got an idea of what your powers are, but still. And before I give my final rating, what does everyone else have to say about X-Men Days of Future Past? Looks like a lot of people like this movie. So, from a final rating of X-Men Days of Future Past, I give it a 4.5 out of 5. So, what's your favorite X-Men character? And see you later.